Is this familiar to you? Spending hours manually calculating payroll, misplacing claim receipts, struggling to engage with employees? What if there was a way to automate HR and spend more time on the things that matter? Meet All HR, an all-in-one HR management software that simplifies HR processes for businesses. All HR has over 20 modules divided into 4 pillars. Core HR, which streamlines and digitalizes core HR operations such as leaves, expenses, payroll, and many more. Employee engagement, designed to boost employee productivity through check-ins, checklists, team calendar, and more. Digital workspace, which enhances the employee experience and gets your business digital ready through the help of rostering, time tracking, spaces, and so on. And perks and benefits that allow employees to enjoy added convenience through the All HR store and insurance. All HR is perfect for companies of all sizes, big and small. It's great for employees, even better for your HR team. Say goodbye to all your HR pains. Ready for a new and improved HR experience? Visit allhr.my to get started.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a good week. I'm Nick, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. I hope everyone is doing great and staying safe at home, particularly if you're in an EMCO area or anywhere else in Malaysia. Do stay safe. But thank you very much to those of you who are here early. Do say hello or good morning in the live chat if you're here. We have a lot of exciting webinars planned for this year. So if you would like to stay in the loop and to receive additional materials from the webinar, don't forget to check in via the QR code or the link in the description box below or in the live chat. So again, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. We have the All HR team on standby, so they'll do their best to answer them or reach out to you later on. Right, so just a quick introduction here to DGX before we begin. DGX is Digi's venture builder arm. Our focus is to help Malaysian companies of all sizes solve problems by digitalizing their operations through our digital solutions, Omni Online, iFleet, and of course, Alt HR. So today's webinar is run together with Piktochart. Piktochart is an easy-to-use visual communication tool that helps you to tell your story, whether it's in the format of a presentation, a report, banner, or even an infographic with the visual impact it deserves. And today for our webinar, we have a very, very special guest, the co-founder and CEO of Piktochart, Goh Ai Ching. So hi and welcome, Ching. We are really happy to have you here to join us. Hi. So today we are going to talk about the 4-day work week, and it's really good of you to join us. Perhaps for a start, you could give us a quick breakdown on how this 4-day work week works over at Piktochart.
Sure. Hey, Nick, thanks for having me. And I am very happy to be talking about the 4-day work week and kind of like how, we got into this whole thing. So first of all, like a 4-day work week, some people may have some misconceptions about what it does. Some people think it's like 4-day work week means 80% of the pay, and then you get people to work, 4 days a week. That's not the case. A 4-day work week means you get 100% of the pay, but you are working on still a 4-day, work week. So I just wanted to clarify that because some people actually asked us whether we cut, salary compensation and benefits as well. We don't, and there are many types and flavors of 4-day work week. Okay, with that, let me just give you some context about what happened. We only started this or thinking about doing this last year. As we all know, 2020 was a very difficult year. In fact, actually, if I can be very honest, I personally feel, I don't know about you all, but I feel like 2021 is harder because 2020, you felt that it was going to come to an end, and you felt like, okay, maybe, by the end of 2020 or beginning of 2021, things will go back to normal. It clearly didn't happen. So for me, I think now the extended lockdown has an even bigger impact, I think, on people's mental health and everything. But what happened last year was we were doing multiple things at the same time. Again, for context, Piktochart is a Malaysian company, but we have always hired people from abroad, meaning like they work with us as independent contractors. We treat them as employees, but legally we can't call them that. And they work with us from Europe, etc. So we always had this like 50% in Malaysia and then 50% from outside of Malaysia. And we've worked like that for multiple years. It's called the hybrid model. And I wasn't very happy with it because I knew that feedback that came in was like, people in Malaysia always find out more about things just because, they're closer to the action, they're closer to HQ. And I didn't want to create that whole centralized operations where there was like two classes of like people, working with Piktochart. So I kept thinking, and I remember that my husband's also my co-founder, he's a CTO, and we kind of talked about this and we said, and we made this decision in November or December of 2019. And we said, we have got to go completely remote in 2020, not knowing that the pandemic was coming. I mean, at the time there were like boiling early signs, of like what's going on in Wuhan, but nobody thought it would be the pandemic it is today. So then fast forward in March or April, the first lockdown happened. And then we said like, okay, let's just take this opportunity, tell the company that we intend to go fully remote. So then we let go of our office. That transition was surprisingly quite smooth. And then actually on that same year, we had on our roadmap to actually build 2 new products. And then we also, during that time and the whole year itself, what I could sense was that I was speaking with people, and so were my leaders speaking with people. And then we have people in meetings, Zoom meetings and all that. And we found something quite uncommon, which was you talk to people and then they'll be like, sorry, can you say that again one more time? Like, can you repeat? They will do things like that, which wasn't showing that they are not awake or that they've been staying up all night watching football or, playing games, but rather that they're overworked. They're overworked because now the boundary, when you're working from home fully, the boundary between work and personal is blurred. It's no longer there, so you're just you're just constantly, if you have work, you just continue working, especially if you don't have family or anything to separate your work life and your personal life. So then I saw that, and then we started looking at ways that we could help people to like better separate, their personal work. But to be honest, we hired like all the really gung-ho people. So obviously we knew that this was kind of going to happen, and happen also to us leaders. We looked at unlimited, vacation policy. We looked at trying to encourage people to take more vacations. We looked at, well, should we just stop Slack from working, from 6 p.m. like onwards at their local time zone? Obviously, that's not implementable, just in case anyone's thinking about doing it. We thought about it a lot, and then I started reading a lot more, and I realized that in US, in New Zealand, in UK, in fact in Spain and Germany, but like those were all done in different flavors, and that was done later during the year. I think about in Q3 or Q4 of last year, the government actually mandated that the whole country kind of went on a 4-day work week. For various reasons, like back then, I think they wanted to also stimulate, like for New Zealand, it was to stimulate local tourism when they could reopen to only New Zealanders. So they did all this kind of stuff. So I was reading a lot of these things, and then I realized that at the end of the day, what we're looking to do as a company, it mattered to us that, of course, we continue to deliver our product, deliver results to our users and our stakeholder, our customers. But it also mattered that we took care of our people, because if these people in a tech company, they are the, I don't know what you call that, like, they're literally the most important asset you have. I mean, like for us, we don't have any machines or anything like that, right? So it's all people. Who's coming out of software, who's coming out of design, who's marketing, who's writing, all people. Now, if we could take care of them, and therefore the quality of their thinking isn't affected, the natural like guess or assumption is that we would see either a better quality output or even increased, output, like, coming from our people. So then, like, the more we read about it, the 4-day work week, and I did a ton of research, like just into the companies who have experimented with it, why it failed. Some people failed doing 4-day work weeks. Some people succeeded. I read a few books by, Wildbit, their company, they went into 4-day work week in 2017. And then we also, I saw Buffer also experimented with that in 2020. And then there's a book by Andrew Barnes, Perpetual Guardian in New Zealand, who was quite famous for going on 4-day work week. So I read a lot of them and tried to understand like different perspectives of why go for the 4-day work week and why not, and what you're trying to solve and all that. And then in Q4 of last year, we decided, okay, you know what, let's just experiment with this. There's no other way of finding out. Like, we're all very curious, but there's only one way to put this to the test, and that was to go for an experiment. So that was like the whole beginning and the reason why we tried the 4-day work week in 2020. Yeah.
Right, thank you. That sounds really, really interesting, but were there any like startup challenges? Were there any initial challenges that maybe the team faced when they were like accommodating themselves to the new 4-day work week? What were the main obstacles, if any?
Yeah, so there were for sure. I mean, like if I say that there's none, it's going to be a lie. I can tell you a few things. You know, I know this is going live and everything, but I think it's okay. When I first proposed and brought up this idea with my husband to the leadership team, not to the rest of the company, right? There was something very, very interesting. So we're quite with my leaders, we're very transparent. We kind of tend to vote on a number of things together. The Asians, or rather the Malaysians, were like, no way, we shouldn't be doing this. Like, you know, if people, like, if we already can't get our work done in 5 days, like, why do you think in 4 days you can get it done, you know? And then the Europeans were like, oh, let's do this. Like, this is the best thing ever. You know, like, the company is going to do so well. Everyone's going to love this. So I got this, like, drastically polar opposite, like, reactions. And I don't usually get that. Usually we disagree. It's normal, but I don't get such a like 0 and 100%, you know, it was like black and white. There was no gray in this case. And I thought it was super funny. And then I thought about it and I asked them, you know, the Malaysians especially, because of course they were like terribly opposing it. So I asked them what were their concerns. So someone said, but you know, if a person already isn't performing so well on the 5-day work week, then you give them the 4-day work week, wouldn't performance get worse? I mean, hey, that's a pretty valid like assumption, you know. But then I said, and I thought about it initially. I was also like, oh yeah, maybe they're right. I thought about it and then I saw that actually there were two different problems. And what we're now trying to use the 4-day work week as was like a silver bullet. You know, it's like, oh, you have employee not working well. Oh, you have employee lazy. You have, you know, people quitting the job. Use all of it. Just, you know, take this like medicine, which is 4-day work week and everything will be cured. Of course, there's no such thing. So I noticed that the problem that our leaders, Malaysian leaders, were like actually fighting against was it's actually a separate problem. And you try to put the two things together and then think that 4-day work week will solve everything. It won't happen. So that was one of the first reactions I got, you know, from the 4-day work week. The other challenge was that we implemented this in Q4. Now, I don't know about you all, but Q4 for Piktochart has always historically been the busiest quarter because it's like the quarter you close your sales target, your this target, your every target. It's all in Q4, right? Like to try to close the year well. So then when we picked Q4, we knew that it was the busiest quarter. That's why we didn't go into a full 4-day work week. We did alternate weeks. So we did 4-day work week, 5-day work week, just to see, you know, whether people sense any difference and everything. Again, initially when we went on, first it was the busiest quarter. So like launch and everything, even I actually worked longer hours, you know, whether it was 4-day or 5-day, I think it would have been the same. I would have worked longer hours because we launched some things in Q4 itself. And the second one was because it's like the period of adjustment, like the first quarter is always, in fact, people say you take about 2 quarters minimum to adjust to a 4-day work week. And people were adjusting to the fact that our team is very lean now. Like finance, I have like 2%, HR, I have like 1%. You know, it's not like I have a huge team. Our company is only 40 plus people. So what happened was I could tell clearly that, you know, some people will be like, I need to take leave in order to do something. And they only had like 3 days left in that week and they're like, I can't get work done. And then they started to like work on Fridays or they started to, you know, carry on their work on other days, which is not the intent. So initially it looked as if like we were failing, you know, after that. But I noticed that by and large, the whole company was actually functioning still relatively well during that time. And then we asked people about some feedback, you know, like on the days when you had 4-day work week, what it was like, and it was overwhelmingly positive. The early polls that we did, the first poll I did before we even tested it out, meaning I announced it and then we said, what do you all think about it? Like just the knee-jerk reaction, right? 70% were like, you know, you guess lah. I mean, like really thumbs up. 20% were neutral and 10% was negative. That was the first poll that we ran. Then after that, when we actually went full-time live with this, we, you know, like did the poll again and I think that was after like 1.5 quarters, like we did the poll again in a random town hall, and this time it was even slightly, like more positive. Slightly, just slightly. I'm not saying that the neutral people move, but the negative people at least moved to neutral. So then we started seeing people enjoying it. Now it's like we have been doing this our fourth quarter, like going into 4-day work week, and I can tell you that if people don't have the 4-day work week, I don't even know if they like they can survive, because now your life is planned around a 3-day weekend, which is beautiful and wonderful for those of us who have families. And there's just a lot more, I think, happiness and like, I think personally fulfilling, but also later, I guess, on the company, there will like come the question around like what was the impact of the company. But yeah, there were some initial challenges for sure, adjusting to it.
Right. So you mentioned that obviously there's more work-life balance for your employees, and in general, it's about employee well-being. But besides that, what have been like the major benefits or the tangible benefits that Piktochart has seen after implementing the 4-day work week?
Yeah, we have we actually set up our company works with OKRs. So for any initiative that we do, whether it's people related, business, marketing, product, anything has to have an OKR. For this, we actually set it to 4 things. The first one was employee retention. We wanted to make sure that we're not losing anybody during this time. But actually, the other one that was more important, we were looking at well-being. We wanted to make sure that that was like the main premise of it, right? How to measure it though? Like, how do you measure well-being? People can lie through their teeth, on like employee engagement surveys and all that. So employee engagement surveys is still one way that we take a look at these things, but we were also looking at the number of sick day leaves taken by people on average. So we could compare that because we have data from obviously every single quarter. We took a look at that, and then we also looked at that the company goals are still continuously delivered, because we had OKRs, so we can look at whether or not the OKRs were, at the same percentage of like yellow, green that we usually have, and hopefully not so many reds. So like we also took a look at that. And very finally, this one is more like a undercover. We don't put this like on the company, but to be honest, we experienced a lot of this one. Employee attraction. Now, we're a very small startup or company. I don't know if we can call ourselves a startup based in Malaysia, and we're trying to attract like world, like really global talent. The fact that we have a 4-day work week makes us extremely competitive. Previously, being fully remote was competitive, but during the pandemic, it's no longer competitive. So also doing a 4-day work week actually helps us to attract and get some very good conversations with people who I think otherwise would not have considered like a smaller company like us, like because they're currently at Amazon or somewhere else. So all of these things I think are benefits that we're experiencing, and we are still seeing the numbers like higher, on a year-on-year basis. So yeah.
Cool, thank you. I think that a lot of employers are probably thinking of employer productivity, or like you mentioned earlier, a lot of maybe local employers or managers are looking into like the productivity that the 4-day work week can change. So would you say that employer productivity has been improved due to this 4-day work week, and how does that work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. When I read about this, right, and I think there's some questions also on the comments, like asking about productivity. Productivity is a very tricky thing to talk about, especially in tech. So, like, what do you measure productivity as? Like, is it the number of lines of code that you write? No, actually, because you could solve a very complex problem using a very short line of code. It just has to be, in good quality. So I think that there's this like, back in the industrial revolution, productivity equaled the quantity of your output. But I argue that in this age that we're living in, it's actually the quality of your output. So like, to give an example, software code really does not need to be written by the most amount of like lines. It just has to do with the best solution, which actually could come in the form of like a very small amount of output, but then it has to be of quality. And that is the part that we're really going for. Now, the book, when I read Wildbit's experience of going 4-day work week, it resonated a lot with me, because the CEO was saying that she read this book called Deep Work, I think, by Cal Newport, and I started studying it a lot as well. He did a lot of research around like human beings. He didn't call it productivity, but people call it a productivity book. But he essentially studied how much of time can a human being possibly spend in like extreme work, like researching, or let's say writing a book. Writing a book is pretty intense. For anybody who's ever endeavored doing it, you all know it's pretty intense. How long can you go on writing a book like nonstop? To finish it, from cover to cover, and like try doing that for, even let's say 8 hours per day. By I don't know which day you would definitely come across a block and you can't write anymore. Like, because your brain actually functions in a way that it does deep work. And most people, it's like a muscle, and it has to go gym. Your mind has to go to a gym, in order to exercise those muscles. Most people are only capable of 1 hour. And even if we're working a lot, to be honest, a lot of our time is consumed in meetings, in all of the things that actually are not deep work. You're not doing your writing, your deep quality thinking and research and all that all the time. You're mostly likely like sucked into meetings and all that. So in it, like what it was arguing for was that protect your people's deep work time, their flow state, eliminate meetings that are unnecessary, and then with the rest of the time, give the person like rest. So in other words, a 4-day work week kind of works well. So a sample itinerary of my life right now, my calendar, is that I try to block out most of my mornings for deep work. This is an exception, I know that. This is my deep work morning. And then my afternoons, because Europe wakes up, and then I have tons of meetings together with them. So I have like 3 hours sometimes, or 4 hours back to back. But my morning time is sacred to me at least. And then I do my deep work, my writing, my research, my thinking about strategy and all that kind of stuff at that time. So that is like the recommended kind of model for most companies. And I feel like if you know how to optimize human mind productivity, then actually it's very beneficial. Like the outcome is also that, with 1 extra day, I'm a mother right now. Then you become so much more like, you can give so much more at work, knowing that you have like more time for your family or for your personal endeavors, hobbies, and all that kind of stuff towards the end of the week. Because at the end of the day, work isn't just work. Like there is, there's so much more in life that we all care about. And we as a company also typically care more about this type of things. So like personal fulfillment outside of work.
Cool. That's very interesting, I think, on how your resources or your time can be best optimized, essentially. But I think something I can see some people asking in the comments, and something that I was wondering myself was, if your company is on a 4-day work week, how does your staff deal with, say, potential meetings or calls with like any customers or any other stakeholders, say on their weekday off, which is a regular work day for the rest?
Yeah. So that one, we also read about it. Some people did some mistakes, but we were very committed. And I told my team, our customers and users shall never find out that we're on a 4-day work week. I mean, apart from our blog announcements, but they'll never read that. So we said they should never find out. In other words, service shall never be compromised. How do you do it? Pretty simple. Get people during launch periods to work Mondays, one group, let's say, to work Mondays to Thursdays, another group to work Tuesdays to Fridays. And it doesn't happen all the time. We don't launch all the time, So like during those times, our product teams will be on standby so that we have coverage to kill any bugs or troubleshoot and deliver like the best, service to our users and customers during like covering Mondays to Fridays. Same thing with the customer support team. So the customer support team also like we have a split. Some people cover Mondays to Thursdays. Some people cover Tuesdays to Fridays. So again, for the American clients, they will never know that we're on a 4-day work week, because it will always look like throughout the clock from Mondays to Fridays, we are, there's always somebody at the help desk helping them out. So, yeah.
Thank you. All right. So I think for many employees out there, the 4-day work week, as you mentioned, is a big attraction, right? Because of work-life balance and because of a lot of different factors. But do you have any advice for maybe some employees that are at the webinar today who are looking to approach their management with a proposal for a 4-day work week? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, my first advice is you need to think about really if 4-day work week is your correct solution for your company. I don't think the 4-day work week, it's like trying to take someone else's culture and then plug it into yours and expecting it to work. It's not going to work. Or seeing how another organization works and it does its marketing, everything, you copy it exactly. It won't work. Like it has to be customized according to your situation, right? For us, there were many, many reasons why a 4-day work week was possible and likely, also measured and can be a success. For us, we had certain foundations already. The first one was the culture anyway, was one that respected a lot, and we kept, and we believed that if we gave our best to our people and they would do their best thinking, then their best thinking would ultimately generate the best, results for the company and the business. So our culture has always been like in such a way for like many, many years already. The second important ingredient was I felt that the company also had a lot of experience working as a hybrid organization, working with remote and not, and then after that going, fully remote. Those foundations are important, not for anything else, but because it dictates once again the culture. A fully remote organization has a lot of trust and autonomy. We also do this thing and practice this thing called the manager of one, which basically means that, of course, you still have like leaders, on top of you. It's not a flat organization, but as much as possible, there is no like, most of the teams at least don't have a formal, performance appraisal. We don't have like all of these things. We have coaches and guides and leaders to help and coach these people out, but up and sometimes out. But most of the time, it is up to the individual in order to like kind of plan their career and all that kind of stuff. You only have coaches. You don't have someone telling you top down what to do. And a lot of these things are actually, in my opinion, quite a necessary ingredient for the company to move and transition towards a 4-day work week. So I don't think it's for everyone. So like the first thing I would think about is like, why a 4-day work week? What is the problem that you're really trying to solve? Because if you go to management, they're going to ask you the same questions anyway. What are some alternatives to solve the problem? The problem, depending on what it really is, it doesn't, if it's burnout or something like that, it doesn't always mean that you're in a 4-day work week and you will not burn out. You can still burn out in a 4-day work week. So it just, again, it depends on what is the problem. Have you evaluated all the other solutions and why exactly you're doing a 4-day work week? And like I mentioned also earlier in the conversation, the 4-day work week, it's not a silver bullet for all of your problems. If you don't have like good leadership, don't have like a good culture and everything, the 4-day work week won't solve all of your problems. It is not some miraculous medicine that any company can try to like take it. So I really would consider all of these questions carefully before one thinks about the 4-day work week. I generally don't think it's something that will apply to every single organization. Yeah. So.
Right. So like you mentioned, maybe a 4-day work week wouldn't work for every industry or every culture, every company culture out there. But do you think it's realistic to maybe one day hope for most or maybe the private sector in a place like Malaysia to be fully implementing something like a 4-day work week? Is that a possibility? Do you think that is something that we can look forward to one day?
I'm a bit skeptical. Let me tell you why I'm skeptical. Because I saw that even this whole remote working environment, let's not talk about 4-day work because that's a bit extreme, to many Malaysians. I've read and heard of many of my friends who said like, we can't do any innovative work right now because we're all working from home. And I was like, since when did that kill innovation? I'll give you examples of some of the largest, most like high growth company, I'm not going to consider like Piktochart one of them, but you have Automatic, the guys who created WordPress, right? And WordPress like fuels don't know how many percent or 30 how many percent of the world's websites. That is a fully remote organization. If you know of Zapier, they're a fully remote organization. If you know of Buffer, the social media management company, they're a fully remote organization before the pandemic. And there are tons of other examples, right? And all of these people, do you think that the companies do not innovate? So I'm like, if we can't even grapple or grasp the whole idea of working remotely, like fully remote, I don't know how we're gonna go for a 4-day work week. Because like I felt that some things are a bit, I wouldn't say stepping stones, but and they're still thinking, if some are even thinking, if I can't see them in the office, they're not productive. And that again is a big like what's it called, like a stumbling block that I think in mindsets of some Malaysian companies, that I think if we don't overcome these things, there's no way we can get to a 4-day work week. So like I felt like it's not going to begin with that, because I personally know of some friends in KL, and they are, let's say, doing marketing work, which is obviously pretty computer related work. And they were forced to go back during the pandemic. And I don't get that part. Like, I really don't get it. I was like, why? Like, during the pandemic, go back to the office to have a meeting. And then, like, I'm sorry. I know there may be people out here that are like disagreeing with me right now, but I felt like, unless that happens, I don't think there's any way we can progress towards a 4-day work week.
Yeah, I think innovation doesn't need to stop, even if we're working remotely. Has Piktochart been working on anything new in the time that you guys have been working remotely, as well as the 4-day work week? Is there anything new coming from the company?
Yeah, so we actually built this new product called Picto Story. So Picto Story, and that's also what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you all for this like video that we've just streamed live. And what we would be able to do is just feed that over the Picto Story. It would auto-generate like captions and the transcript. And from the transcript, I can just go like, oh, this part, I talked about something interesting. Put it, around a frame and put some like logo and watermark or whatever on it. And then I can publish it directly on my social media. So that's pretty convenient because these days we all do a lot of like Zoom calls and webinars and all that kind of stuff. So that is going to be helpful, hopefully, to many people. We've just started. We went in beta in October of last year, and then this year in May. Yeah, in May we went live and actually monetized the first product. So that all just kind of happened very, very recently.
Cool, that sounds awesome. So we have just one last quick question. After all of the benefits and going remote, does Piktochart plan to continue this 4-day work week as well as staying remote, like in the long term, in a permanent sense?
Yeah, for us, yes. I'll say that because whatever we've set ourselves up to test, as I said, in terms of employee well-being and then looking at the company results and just looking at employee retention and attraction, it's all looking very good for the company. So I don't think now it's like it's embedded within the culture of the company. You can't really remove it unless something like quite drastic happens, but I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for taking the time. I think we will move the webinar on to the Q&A session. We have a lot of really good questions from the audience, actually. To everyone watching this, please feel free to keep the questions coming in the live chat. We are really, really excited to get Ching to answer the questions. But yeah, let's go to the first question, and this is from Kenny. Do you recommend a 4-day work week to new startups, or should we only apply when the company is more sizable, when they've scaled to beyond 15 employees?
I do not recommend it to new startups. I'll say that why, because I've personally done the whole Picto Story thing. It was tough, like even though I've been running like Piktochart for 10 years, it was really tough actually to be doing a 4-day work week. I needed a lot more management, and I will not lie about this, but during Picto Stories launch, I was doing 5-day work weeks still. There's no way. So I don't think if you're in that hustle mode trying to get out, I felt like this is more for a company that's scaling at a more scaling stage versus someone who's still trying to find product market fit. It can be very, very tough. I personally found it tough for Picto Story. Yeah.
When would you say is the right time to implement something like this then? At what stage can they comfortably do so, would you advise?
I think when your culture is like stable and then, like you have a very set routine and you just need to continuously innovate now, but you're not fighting, like to launch and to grow and to like really, like that early stage where your users will still be banging on your doors. Hey, where's that feature? Where's that feature? Like that's not a good time for you all to be doing a 4-day work week. I think as a founder, you feel very conflicted unless, of course, you intentionally build the company to be very, very small. Like I cannot remember the names of the company, but there were a few. Gumroad, I don't know if you all heard of Gumroad, but Gumroad is one such company that the whole organization, including the CEO, is a part-timer. Everybody works less than 32 hours. Everyone. So there's some people only doing 20 hours, some only do 10 hours, but that's a very extreme organization. They built it intentionally with the intent of making the organization that way. Then they could actually, I think, go on they do less than 4 days actually. So the whole organization are part-timers, but all extremely experienced people, like directors at major companies join them. So.
Awesome. Okay, let's move on to the next question. This is from Sabi. So if you have a 4-day work week, but still the same amount of work, don't you just put in the same number of hours anyways, just in a tighter time frame?
And that was the thing that I tried to explain earlier through the analogy of like, during the Industrial Revolution, it was all about quantity and the number of hours. Actually, let me ask you all this. Does it mean that if you're at work like okay, let's say whether it be 6 hours today or 8 hours today, does your like, in terms of your productivity, can you confidently say, if I did 6 hours of work, I did less work? It might not be. You could finish your same amount of work that you finish in 8 hours. You could actually, get it done. So it's not, I don't think it's about like so much the number of hours, but more about preserving, like I said, the deep flow state of the people so that they can protect their time in order to do deep work and therefore produce more quality output. That's what I've been telling my team as well. Of course, we have timelines and everything, don't get me wrong, but we're not like, okay, completely agnostic about, timeline and quantity. But in general, it's not about counting the number of hours. Like that was a policy that we had to overcome ourselves, the more we read and thought about it, like even examine our own lives, we realized it is your work cannot be measured by the number of hours you're putting into it.
Right, cool. That's a really good answer. I think we can move on to the next question. This next one is from Anwar. It's normal for everybody to do a little bit of work on off days. Of course, I think we can all kind of relate on that. But what was the before and after situation after the implementation of the 4-day work week?
During the test phase, the test quarter in Q4, it was pretty rough. I remembered a lot of people working on off days, myself included, because we were launching Pixel Story. But I just kind of, told people, hey, it's fine. You all need to take replacement leave or whatever, like it's granted. And the other thing about like Piktochart is that leave management is actually auto-approved. So everyone has a set amount of allocation. Actually, the whole company has the same amount of leaves in 2021 onwards. And they auto apply for the leaves and all that kind of stuff. And then just say, if you all took extra days because you were working very hard on the launch, doesn't happen all the time. But if that happens, then please just, credit yourself with an extra day and then take it off whenever you need. So we make them completely their own managers, they decide, in that sense. But I'll say that first quarter was pretty rough. I remembered a lot of people telling me, oh, I'm still working on Fridays. Not a lot, a lot means like 5, out of like 40 something. But then it gradually improved. And then I saw it happening again during launch, which is understandable. And I think we just need to be okay with that. Like doing those once or twice in a year type of event for each of the employees, and then just let them self-manage their time.
So it sounds like there needs to be a short period of adaptation for the team as well.
Yes. I think this is between 3 to 6 months actually. But
okay.
Yeah, but once adapted, then it will still happen. I mean, like, with launches and all that, I'm also quite forgiving of myself. Like if I need to work, then I'll just work that particular day. Then, in the future 1 month or so, I'll take another day off. That's it. Nothing special.
All right, cool. Thank you so much for that answer. I think we have time for a couple more questions. This next question is from ZY Tan. My company is struggling in preparing SOPs for a 4-day work week. We are a software company, which means that we have to provide client support 5 days a week. Did Piktochart set any particular SOPs or standard operating procedures for the 4-day work week?
Well, congrats for doing it. First of all, I mentioned quite earlier on about that my policy, and I told my team this, that the users and the customers should never find out that we're on a 4-day work week. So like, I don't want them to like, oh, sorry, we're off support on Fridays because nobody's working. Like it should never be compromised. So what we just did was like, we had a rotation between some people worked Mondays to Thursdays, some people worked Tuesdays to Fridays. It was fine. Like people voluntarily chose which days they wanted to go for, and then we just stuck with it. Yeah.
Right, cool. Next question, please. Do we have any more questions from the audience for Ching? Right, we have another question from Sabi. Thank you very much. This is the second question, but a really good one. How about internally? Has it affected communication? If you can't reach any of your team members on certain days, how do you guys keep track of that?
That's a very good question, because this one touches a lot on asynchronous communication. Now, asynchronous communication in a remote organization, Matt Willenberg, who is the founder of Automatic WordPress, he drew this pyramid up, and in it had like all the different stages of a company as they progress towards becoming. He put it at the top like a nirvana, like terrible word, but to get to like the state of like a fully remote organization, and that was called the asynchronous like remote organization. An asynchronous remote organization meant that everything in the company still works despite having people in like time zones that are 17 hours apart, like from Hawaii all the way to, I don't know, like the furthest point, maybe Tokyo from it, I don't know. And also that, communication still needs to work. So this is to this particular question. Has it affected communication if you cannot reach your team members on certain days? We have told our people, please don't become Slack answering machines. For those of you who have Slack, you may know what I'm talking about. Slack is actually a very major cause for stress. And it's a very major cause for disruption of deep work, which is what the company would be against if we are, 40 work week and then we're trying to protect the deep work of our employees, right? So some companies have gone very, very extreme, and I've read about that, to eliminate the need of distractions through Slack and everything. So they've eliminated entirely, meaning there's no way to get in touch with people through instant messaging. You have to use like a company wiki or email or something really crazy like that in order to get in touch with people, because then at least it protects the people from like being endlessly sucked into the whole like Slack channel, and then you like people spending too much time there. So for us, we have said that please still check your Slack, but please set time for it too. Don't be on Slack, like feel the compelling need to be on Slack all the time, because you won't be doing any work. You just be a chatting machine. And that's something that, we've come across. But in general, our off days and everything are also available on the calendar. So if someone's off, we'll just know, hey, expect a delay. And we're not impatient about like, we must get a reply, like CEO asked you a question, so you better get it done by, by the next hour. So there is no such expectation within the organization. So I think being asynchronous is actually helpful to, to make communication better. And also the elimination of live meetings. You can eliminate that by recording videos, which I've also started doing. Sometimes I need to explain a concept to someone and then you can't type it out. So instead of jumping on a meeting, which is what I think we like Malaysians love doing, I used to do it a lot as well, or jumping on a phone call or WhatsApp call or whatever, right? We stopped doing it. So instead, we just use Piktochart. We record the webcam right now, and then I will, after recording a webcam, send off the link to the colleague, and they'll watch it and be like, okay, I've seen this, I know what to do now. So we've just eliminated like her time, my time, everybody's time, like jumping onto a meeting and solving the problem. Of course, it doesn't work with like brainstorming, all that kind of stuff, but it does work if it's like a short explanation you need to give. So like recording all of these asynchronous videos internally for internal use has been helpful to stop the need of like, I need to talk to you now, so yeah.
Cool. I think that's really interesting about how an efficient use of your resources and time can actually lead to this sort of outcome. And I think that's something that's very, very interesting for a lot of us. Let's move on to the next question, please. Okay, so this next one is from Samantha. Thank you for your question, Samantha. Are there any tools other than Slack that you would recommend? Although you mentioned the pros and cons of Slack as well, but are there any tools besides this that you recommend to every team member to stay aligned and to make sure that everyone in the team meets their deadlines?
Yeah, I think the choice, it's not so much the tool. You can use anything. You can use Asana, you can use Trello, you can use Jira. I mean, we use Jira, but that's because our developers are very familiar with it. So you could use any tool. I don't think it's a tool. It's more the principles, or the process itself. Like, what kind of process do you all want? And if that's clear, it took us, by the way, a long time to figure out the process. We took about a year or so. We moved from Agile Scrum to now we're doing like a mesh of what's that called? Why is the word scale up? But it's done by basically shape up. Yes, shape up. Sorry, which is I felt like determining the process is actually more important than picking the tools. So figure out, like, for product development, especially if you're a tech company, figure that out and then give the people like the principles that you are using, in order to manage and make the whole like process flourish, and then empower them as much as possible. I would say that the choice of tool is, I think it's agnostic. You can pick whichever you want. Yeah.
All right, I think that is all the time we have for the questions. That's what the team is telling me on the back. So yeah, I think we will end it today. That is all the time we have. If you guys still have any burning questions for Ai Ching that we weren't able to address during the webinar, please feel free to send them over to us at hello@healthhr.my, or you can reach out to Ai Ching via LinkedIn. But thank you very much again for watching. We really, really hope that you enjoyed this webinar. Of course, right now, it's really important that everybody stays safe, that they stay healthy. And of course, we will see you again soon in our next webinar. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And thank you very much, Ai Ching, for taking the time to have this chat with us.
No problem. Stay safe, everyone.
Bye.